The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So if you're going to make a major league debut, do it like Andres Chaparro last night for the Nationals. Yeah, there have been guys who've had 3 hits. He had 3 doubles. And here's how rare that is. Since 1901, only 2 other players in baseball history have done that. Nick Evans for the Mets in 2008 and Ben Grieve for the Oakland A's in 1997. Grieve had a pretty good career. Don't know what became of Evans, and who knows what becomes of Andres Chaparro, but he'll always have last night 3 doubles in the Nationals' 9-3 win over the Orioles. And James Wood, oh boy, more and more tantalizing. 4 hits last night. Almost had a chance to go 5 for 5, but grounded out when the game was out of hand. But budding stars, and we had the Battle of the Beltways last night. We've got the Orioles, who are where they want to be right now, contending. They're not playing very well right now, but they're 20 games over 500. They're going to be in the playoffs, just a question of whether they win the division, where you have the Nats, who are trying to get back to where they were 5 years ago when they won the World Series. And you look at some of the young players that they have, including Wood and C.J. Abrams. Amazing they came in the same deal for Juan Soto, who didn't do the Orioles any favors last night with 3 home runs as the Yankees beat the White Sox. But, you know, it's kind of an interesting intersection that's going on right now because 5 years ago, the Orioles were in the dumper, and the Nationals, after that bad start when they were 19-31, went on to win the World Series, and it was expected that they would be in the mix for a while before the pandemic and injuries and all those other things started to add up. And the Orioles are built to win now. They won the division last year. They are looking to win it again this year and then go at least a step, maybe a couple of steps further than they did last year after not getting swept all year. They got swept by Texas in the playoffs. Texas, of course, went on to win the World Series. So there's a lot of things to dissect there, and we're going to do this in Orioles preview coming up at 10:30. James McCann, catcher, will be with us. And one of the interesting things about his career is he played for USA national team, the baseball team, in 2019. And coming off the Olympics, I'm curious to get his thoughts on, you know, baseball coming back as an Olympic sport. It's not there now. Could they bring it back in Los Angeles? And what it's like to represent your country playing as a major league player as he was in 2019 with the White Sox. So we'll get to all of that stuff and other baseball, but football on the front burner now, and training camp going on in Washington. And as we opened the show yesterday, I was somewhat stunned to hear that they had brought in Martavis Bryant, who has not played in the NFL since 2018. Now, he's bounced around these other leagues. He played in Canada. He played in the XFL. And I guess the biggest reason that he's here is that he was on the Cowboys practice squad last year. Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator. And when they have practice, you have the backups on offense playing against the Cowboys' first-team defense. That's how they prepare. And, you know, they kind of run a dummy offense of whoever they're playing, and I guess Quinn was impressed enough to take a look. Now, they did bring him in the offseason after the Cowboys had cut him in May, just kind of kicked the tires, and I guess they saw enough that they bring him back. Now, there's a lot of questions as to why they would do this because they haven't had any injuries on special teams, and De'Ami Brown, who had been sort of forgotten in everything that's been going on, he's become a Dan Quinn favorite. None of the receivers are as big as Bryant. He's 6'4", so that has a lot to do with it. But it leads to speculation, are they looking to trade one of the wide receivers? Certainly not Terry McLaurin, who's got the huge contract and is a team leader and all those things. But Jahan Dotson, who was really good as a rookie and dropped off last year, former first-round pick, could he be of some value with, 3 years essentially left on his contract? Because as a first-rounder, he'd have that fifth-year option. So there's some intrigue there that wasn't there before. To make room, they cut a kicker. Not a surprise. This was Quinn yesterday on the roster move to bring in Bryant.
Going with 2 kickers, by no means, through the first, our last couple weeks in camp. Still an open competition for us at that spot. But we did feel like this was something, let Riley go into this week and have these reps at Miami, both at practice and at the game. We'll kick, obviously, both in those settings. And so and adding another receiver just into the mix, we thought was the right thing to go, just right here in camp. And Martavis has a really cool skill set. He's got size and length and the ability to use him in the red zone. So when you see him today, you'll definitely he'll stand out. He looks like a linebacker playing wide out from a size standpoint. So I got a chance to work with him previously when I was in Dallas, and so I'm looking forward to having him here today.
Obviously when you look at the top receivers on your team, the smallest guys, but not necessarily bigger guys. Is that size? Is that something that you thought is needed more in this room possibly?
Yeah, and I think when you do, how do you feature somebody with that kind of size? What are the routes that they do on these contested catches? So, yes, it was definitely part of the consideration.
And what else did you learn about him last year that made you want to give him another shot?
Competing against him, he was on the practice squad, and so seeing the skills, seeing how we'd compete against him, oftentimes in practice we'd put him, into a certain spot to, simulate the size of a receiver, the speed of a receiver. So getting here now and starting with Bobby and getting the process started, we'll find out the things that he can do well, and then how would we feature them into it. But he's got real size, like the catch radius, throw it over here. He's got length to, throw it away from somebody on an option route. So those are the things, John, with somebody with that kind of size, whether it's the red zone for a guy who can get up to go, or option routes where you can throw away from a defender knowing, hey, this is incomplete or my guy's getting it.
All that true. He's big. You can't coach size, as they say. But hadn't played in an NFL game in 6 years. I remember talking to Charlie Casserly about this when he was the GM of the Redskins, and he said he was hesitant to take a guy who'd been out of the NFL for 2 years. He's been out for 6 years. Last played with the Raiders, the Oakland Raiders, in 2018. This is Quinn on why that is not really a big factor in this case.
No, I wasn't like reservations, because the practice part is what you want to see. Now, how soon we can get him up, to get him here in the preseason, that's what we'll find out today, Nikki. But, going through practices with him last year and seeing him compete, he was ready to do that. We didn't elevate him, from the team didn't, but he was certainly ready to do that.
And when you brought him in the first time in the spring, does he look like the same guy he did then? I mean, what really stood out to you aside from the size?
I think he's in really good shape, the quickness to go, and he's really hungry to prove it. And so when you get those moments, you really want to go for it. And he's been ready for a while, so it's good to have him here.
Yeah, no guaranteed money, so it's nothing ventured, nothing gained. The question though remains, with a healthy group of receivers, is this either a message that you're not happy with what you're seeing from them, or is it the possibility that they're going to trade one of them? This is Quinn kind of dancing around that.
There's not a message being sent here. This is we're always doing this. So I would say if this is our normal of finding an edge, pushing it further, and that's kind of what we stand for. So no message given other than this is how we get down.
Yeah, and he's been all over this competition thing since he got here. The competition at every position. Now, he can't make any of the receivers taller, but he might be able to say, I got a guy here who has a skill set that's different than yours, and we would not necessarily keep all the receivers of relatively the same size if we got somebody who we can make some throws to in the end zone and this kind of thing. Because he was a big touchdown maker when he was with the Steelers. He really did perform. He had some big years. The issue with him has been drugs. He's been in and out of the league with various suspensions. He even had 2016 he was suspended the whole year. 2015 he got a 4-game suspension for that. So if that part of his life is under control. He is 32. He's going to be 33 soon, or I guess before the end of the season, and he hasn't played for 6 years. But he sounds quite humble and talked about getting the call and getting the opportunity to compete.
It's an exciting reaction, but at the same time, you still got more work to put in. You got to come here, you got to work, you got to look good. So, I've been working hard. In the last season, I was 230, so I'm down to 208 now. So I've been working hard.
And that Cliff Kingsbury offense, I know you're just seeing it for the first time, but what do you see?
Super exciting, man. Guys out there making plays, guys out there working hard and playing fast.
Did you know about Jayden kind of before signing him? Did you watch him last year in college?
Watched him last year in college, and I've been watching him throughout training camp and the preseason game. He's a great guy. He's ready to seize his moment, and I'm here to support him and whatever he needs help with, I'm gonna be here.
More. Sorry if this was already asked, but obviously it's been a while since you were at this NFL level. How do you mentally kind of stay in this, knowing that it may not happen again?
Got to be strong-minded, to be honest with you. I've been through a lot, so I don't give up on myself. Never gave up. I always been a fighter, and I'm continuing to do that.
Last one.
Did you always believe another chance would come like this?
I honestly didn't know. I just had to make sure I was prepared to seize the moment when I was going to get the opportunity again. I'm grateful and I'm thankful.
So he sounds humble, and he will give it a shot. Albert Breer is making the rounds, as most of these NFL guys do, training camp to training camp, and he wound up in Ashburn yesterday and wrote about his thoughts on SI.com today. He said the coaches have, and this is all stuff that you've heard, but this is just a little bit more elaboration on that they are all thrilled with how Jayden Daniels has picked up the Cliff Kingsbury offense. I think you're always excited when you got a rookie quarterback who's a Heisman Trophy winner and walks in the building at 5 o'clock in the morning, knows the mental part of the game is as big as the physical part of the game, and has been working hard to pick that up. So I think that's very important. The thing that they're worried about is, and I really sense this, I don't know if you did watching the game on Saturday, but you get a sense of how thin he is. It's a little bit different when you're watching him play college football, because there are more players in college who have the slight build. They're not NFL players. NFL, they're all big guys, big behemoths, and he just looks very slender. And the hits that he took in college, you can't take those in the NFL or you're not going to stay upright. And you don't have twice as many games, but you got about a third more games, right? You play 12 regular season games in college. You're playing 17 in the NFL. That's soon going to be 18. So that's something that they really have to be concerned about. And I don't think it's, he has that kind of build that you can't necessarily put another 30 pounds of muscle on him. I don't think that's going to happen. And the question is he going to be able to protect himself? So that's the big issue. But the fact that he's really into getting into the mental part of the game, that's a big deal. Also, Breer impressed with Austin Eckler. Boy, he looks like he is in shape, and he's going to be a media guy, no question about that. He's embracing all the interviews that he's doing, both here and nationally. But this is what he wrote about Eckler. He says he's shown he still has the juice. Could be a souped-up version that Chase Edmonds was for Kingsbury in Arizona. Edmonds had 96 catches in 28 games over the past 2 years that they spent together. That's big. That's big. A pass catcher who can also run the football. And Brian Robinson, we've heard this before, but they didn't use him properly last year. And he is a guy who can also catch the ball. And so, the run game to take some of the pressure off of Daniels, and also the ability to throw to running backs, the checkdowns, that's going to be big for what they do. The offensive line, very much a question right now. They've had some injuries, guys in and out, but he says they're looking at making Brandon Coleman a starting tackle, which is kind of an unusual thing these days. The defense acquisition that he says stood out, and we've heard this before, Frankie Luvo. He's not Micah Parsons, but Dan Quinn signed him with the idea he could be a movable piece in the front seven, the way Parsons was for him in Dallas. And Luvu looks capable as a player who's quick, explosive, and clearly at his best moving towards the line of scrimmage. Jeremy Chin is another addition that gives Quinn some flexibility in how he lines guys up and moves them around on that side of the ball. And again, that's been something that Quinn has been preaching, playing multiple positions, that you can move guys to different spots and have them play at a high level. I think what they're doing with Jamin Davis makes all the sense in the world, making him into an edge rusher. And that's pretty much what happened to LeVar Arrington here when he had his best year, when he had, I think, 11 sacks with Marvin Lewis. That's what he was. He was a hand in the dirt defensive end, and he was not one who was really that interested in scheme. He was such a great athlete at Penn State. They just let him make plays all over the field. Doesn't work that way in the NFL, and Marvin just got tired of him not following the defense. That's what eventually led LeVar to the bench when Joe Gibbs took over, because he wasn't following the defense. They had Warwick Holdman, who was like like a tenth of LeVar in ability, but he was playing ahead of him because LeVar didn't want to follow the defense. So making Jamin Davis into a pass rushing edge rusher is, I think, is a very smart thing on what they're trying to do. So Breer coming away impressed. The big takeaway, though, as he says, it's hard to take two steps in this place without hearing from someone about how impressed they are with quarterback Jayden Daniels. And this is what Nick Allegreti told my friend Scott Abraham after practice yesterday on just what it means for Daniels to be in the huddle with a veteran group like this.
Shockingly confident, in a great way. Very calm, but not loosey goosey, but calm, confident. Gets the play call, gives it to the O-line receivers, and he's been playing. It's like he's been doing this for a lot longer than he has. He's been doing it for a few months at this level. One preseason game, one drive, but he was just that 12, 13 play drive, whatever we have. He was super calm, relaxed, having fun, smiling, and that's one of the things I feel like gets lost a lot in the NFL is having fun playing football. Because, at the end of the day, it is a game. It's such a fun sport to get to play, and the fact that we get to do it for a living is awesome. And I think he has an incredible perspective for being a young guy in this league.
And that's Nick Allegreti, who did some blocking for a quarterback you might have heard of named Patrick Mahomes, who has 3 rings and is the best player in the game right now. He's not saying that Jayden Daniels is Mahomes right now, but this is a guy who has seen the best and is looking at a young guy hoping to join that fraternity. We'll get to what Albert Breer said yesterday on the Rich Eisen show about his visit to Ashburn. Also, Cliff Kingsbury talking to Diana Rossini of The Athletic about his experiences so far as the offensive coordinator in Washington and what he expects out of his offense this year. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Orioles preview coming up at 10:30. We'll talk to catcher James McCann. Nationals rocked the Birds last night 9-3, dropping the Orioles a half game behind the Yankees. Juan Soto, 3 home runs for New York. First time in his career that he's hit 3 home runs. He's only 25, doesn't turn 26 until the offseason. And he may not get Ohtani money. I don't think he will, but he's going to get a nice, big, fat payday. And the question is, who's going to give it to him in the offseason? Meantime, Commanders continue to get ready for their preseason game against the Dolphins on Saturday. Albert Breer making the rounds for SI.com. I read you some of what he wrote today, and this was his conversation yesterday with Andrew Siciliano, filling in for Rich Eisen on the Rich Eisen show about what Breer has seen from the Commanders.
As close as you can get to 100% without being 100%, I would say he's going to be the starter here. And I think, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just do what Chicago did? Well, the Commanders are in a much different place than the Bears are. The Bears did it almost out of service to their team, right? Like where it's like, okay, like we've got a veteran team. You have a coach and GM who are in their 3rd year. It makes sense for them not to fiddle around with anything, right? Like just install him as a starter. So Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Tevin Jenkins and all those veteran players, Cole Kmet, those veteran players they have on that side of the ball can start to grow with him, right? Because those guys don't want to wait to win. The Commanders are starting from ground zero, and so, I think a big part of making him win the job is you want to make every rookie win the job, especially when you're telling Bobby Wagner or Jonathan Allen or Terry McLaurin that every position is open, right? Like, because you're trying to preach competition. So I think everybody knows the score here. He's taking all the first-team reps. He's operating as a starter would. They just haven't declared it yet. And I will say this too, Andrew. You can't walk 5 feet in this place without hearing from somebody else how good Jayden Daniels has looked, how good he's been. I think because of the offense they're going to run here, he has a real chance to hit the ground running as a rookie.
Is there any concern? It's going to sound like a shot at Cliff Kingsbury. It isn't. Mm-hmm. But is there any concern that this offense? Yeah. I just hope they protect him. Let me just put it that way. Yeah. I hope there are answers to the test here for Jayden Daniels to make sure that he doesn't get beat up and he doesn't have to be like Kyler. They're different players, I realize, running around in circles back there.
Yep. So a couple things there. Number one, they have talked to him about, and have you seen the Looney Tunes video?
No.
Andrew? Okay, so anybody who's listening can go look it up. You can go on Twitter and search Jayden Daniels and Looney Tunes.
Okay, here I go.
I'm serious. Like when you guys watch it, you'll want to watch it 10 times. It's got Looney Tunes sound effects to Jayden Daniels taking hits in college. And it's funny to watch because it's all the sound effects from when we were kids. And it's timed up really nicely. It's well done. But it also underscores like that this is a guy who did take a lot of big hits in college. And this is not a guy who's built like Cam Newton. And so like what you're talking about doesn't just apply to protecting him in the passing game. It applies to protecting him in the run game.
Sure.
And he barely ever got hurt in college. So that's to his credit. But you add one thing to the other, the build to the amount of damage he's typically taken. And it was a real concern, not just for the Commanders, but for every team that was evaluating Jayden Daniels, going into the draft in April. And so that's something they're very much going to have to address. They've got issues at tackle. So they're going to have to take care of it, with how they protect. And then, they're going to want to take advantage of who he is as a runner. And so if you're going to do that, you got to, teach him and ingrain in him, like the importance of, sometimes you can be in 2nd and 6. You don't need to get to 2nd and 2, And if there's a 80-yard run there for you, take it. But, you don't always have to put your head down and grind out the extra couple of yards. And so, it's a credit to Jayden Daniels because he's tough and he's willing to take the hits, but it's something they have to work on with him. And I think another way that they're going to manage this is through the run game. It's more difficult to get to the quarterback if you're effective running the ball. And they feel like they've got a couple of really good backs in Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, who's been fantastic. Eckler's been great on the field and does seem like he's got some juice left coming over from the Chargers. So, I'd say it's, having Jayden being cognizant of the fact that he can't take hits the way that he did in college. It's, leaning on the run game, which naturally will slow down the pass rush. And then it's managing your offensive line issue in a certain way. And I think Cliff's smart enough to coach around his personnel. And, even though like in Arizona, there were a lot of times when, they weren't keeping 6 or 7 guys in to protect. I think they're well aware that their tackle issue being what it is, there are going to be times where they're going to have to do that a little bit more often in 2024.
That's Albert Breer yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show. Andrew Siciliano filling in again. He believes that it's a slam dunk that Daniel starts the opener, but they are playing it safe with him. And one of the things that Quinn explained earlier this week, he said, we're really playing the long – this is not his words, I'm paraphrasing – playing the long game with him. They want him to be a star in this league for a long, long time. They're also in a position as a new coaching staff where they don't have to rush him into play. This could be a playoff year if everything goes right. Doesn't have to be a playoff year. After what this organization has been through in the Dan Snyder years, those 24, the honeymoon is going to be on for a while. And if it takes a while for Daniels to develop, so be it. And the protection thing is going to be a big part of it, making sure that he doesn't wind up with injuries, because that will derail a career more than anything else. I mean, look at Richardson last year in Indianapolis. What did he play? 4 games, 5 games, something like it. It was great in those 5 games, but, you got to stay on the field. He mentioned Kingsbury. Kingsbury had an interview with Diana Rossini, who does a podcast on The Athletic, and these are some things that he talks about here and what he hopes to accomplish with the offense. He's not going to give you a lot. He doesn't seem like he really likes to do interviews that much, but will do them. So this was Diana, who was with ESPN for many years and is now doing a podcast with Chase Daniel, who's like he's like the number 1 clipboard guy in the history of the NFL. He played 14 years and made like 5 starts, but was in a lot of different quarterback rooms, knows a lot about the game. And this was Diana talking to Cliff Kingsbury about coming to Washington.
I'm excited to be here. Working for DQ has been amazing. And then the quarterback room has been awesome. Marcus Mariota and Jayden and Jeff Driscoll. We got Sam Hartman. So it's been fun. It's been a deal that's really re-energized me and made me realize why I like coaching so much.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word re-energize, because Zach Ertz said to me as he was walking off the field, "You talking to Cliff?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, he's got more energy now than he did in Arizona. And I know how invested you are and how much time you put into your work in building Kyler Murray and building that team. And what you did was really good. That being said, what is it about this experience that you just feel maybe a little different this time?
Just my ability now to pour into the offensive side and get to know the players and the relationships. And DQ creates an environment that he wants you to be yourself and make it fun for the players. And that is right down my alley. So after being around the college kids for a year at USC and then getting this fresh start, it's just been awesome. I just feel like it's where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, when you were, let's call it the CEO of an organization, you don't get to spend that much time specifically with just the offense. Now you get to do that. Do you like being in this role now where you get to just do what you're best at compared to having to oversee all of it?
It's been good. You know, I was never an OC in the NFL, so I jumped straight from college head coach to NFL head coach. So to be able to do this and really focus on our players and on that side of the ball and pour everything into the offense is a new experience, and I'm really enjoying it.
All right, so I've never met Jayden. Okay, I know nothing about him. I mean, I know about him, but I don't know him the way you have. Tell me what he's like, first just as a guy.
He's humble, but very, very competitive when he gets on the field. I mean, he talks as much trash as anybody on the field. Off the field, you never guess it. But
so he's out there just getting in guys' faces?
With everybody. Bobby Wagner, I mean, the vets. So he has a lot of fun. He wants to win every drill, but he shows up ready to work, and he attacks it with a great energy every day. And so it's been a joy. He's really, like I said, lifted me up, lifted our quarterback room up, just the way he approaches practice every day. You're
known around the league as a guy who just knows how to develop quarterbacks. You know how to take the talent they have, their intellect, and form it into greatness. What skill do you think you have as a coach that you're able to help these guys?
I've been lucky, I'll say that, being around the right guys. That's first and foremost. But I just try to let them play to their strengths and try to figure out what that is and what they do best, and then let them work on that first and then build from there. And so far it's worked, and I'm really excited to work with this new one.
Jayden, what is he going to bring as a quarterback? What do you think his best skill is right now? It could change, but at this moment right now, as we're just a few weeks out from the opener, what do you think is the best talent he brings to the Commanders?
Yeah, from a young guy's perspective, I would say his ability to progress through reads. A lot of times young guys will get hung up on their first read and either throw it or run, and he's a guy who can get to his second, third reads, and with the running backs we have to be able to find your checkdowns and know where they're at, he's really excelling at that at an early age.
How much do you guys talk? How does that work? What's the communication like with your quarterback?
Quite a bit, yeah, quite a bit. We text quite a bit. Yesterday he was texting me play ideas for the first play. He wants to throw it deep. I'm like, we're not throwing it deep first play of the preseason. So he is really good, man. He's has a great rapport with the guys, with the coaches, and he wants to be coached.
Zach said to me, he's not going to be good. He is good, right? He is good. Knowing a quarterback has all the right things that they're bringing already, but they're still young. What are some things that you worry about early on when you have a guy that just doesn't have experience yet?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be ups and downs with a young guy, and he's handled it well. I think his experience in college was starting in Arizona State, then transferring. He played for Brian Kelly, who coaches quarterbacks as hard as anybody ever in the history of football, has really helped him. And so I just, if his process stays the same, his consistency to each and every day stays the same, the success will come. He's just got to hang with it, and when we go through the bad times, just keep working.
All right, finally, what is a Cliff Kingsbury offense going to look like in Washington? In your dream scenario, what are we going to see on Sundays?
Dream scenarios, everybody stays healthy.
That's a good start. It's always a good start.
And then we're still trying to figure out what we are exactly. We want to play to our strengths and maximize the personnel we have. I really like the running back combination with Austin and B-Rob. I mean, they complement each other well. And then getting Zach here as a tight end, who's a quarterback's best friend, has been good. And then Terry McLaurin is tremendous. So it starts with the good pieces and have some other guys step up, and we'll build it from there.
That's Cliff Kingsbury talking to Diana Rossini. I think the number one takeaway for me is Daniels sees the field. He goes through his progressions quickly. That is, as Kingsbury said, and you've heard for years if you've followed football, that's the number one adjustment that quarterbacks have to make. And Peyton Manning isn't much faster than I am, but he could go to the line of scrimmage and he could assess what the defense looked like, and then he could go through his reads so quickly. He was getting rid of the ball in less than 2 seconds, and that's really what it's all about. For all the toughness that Sam Howell showed last year, he held on to the ball too long because he was trying to figure out what to do with it. That's the ball game. Seeing what you need to see, seeing where your receivers are, going through the progressions, as he said. He also talked about the running backs being able to catch the football as checkdowns. That's very, very big. So, you want to get excited about this, but you also have to pump your brakes, and you have to realize, as good as he may be, that there's going to be an adjustment period. Some more stuff from Dan Quinn yesterday, getting ready to play the Miami Dolphins this weekend. And, it is an exhibition game. You're going to have guys in and out. So it's not like they've done a lot of film study on the Dolphins. There really essentially is no game plan going into this.
We won't go in game planning against them. Like, it's more on the matchups, the skill work to go through it. So we won't plan into it for the game to game plan, but we will allow the rules and, looks to dictate how we would play. But it's really more about us, Chick, and our performance, our skills, and finding some matchups and just digging in on more information and more detail. So less scheme and really more on the personnel side, the evaluations. And Adam and I and the staff, we've met for a long time last night to discuss both the practice and the game from New York. To say, just from those exposures, what we see, what do we want to see more of? So it's almost a similar process for this week's game.
All right, and now the big question is how much are we going to see Jayden Daniels play? This usually, the second exhibition game, now that they only play 3, is when the quarterback gets the most extensive playing time. Quinn not really letting on. Sometimes the way they'll do this is they'll keep a guy in long enough to see what they want to see. If it doesn't happen in 2 drives, they may keep him in for 3. If it doesn't happen in 1 quarter, he may play the second quarter. Sometimes they play a whole half. Sometimes they'll do that. But this is Quinn on the question of how much playing time are the starters going to get.
The progression would be one that's good is just a different style of defense, of how you play, different matchups. So the Jets are a big 4-down front, and so by design it's nice to have different offense, different defense to work through it. The 4-day block is actually really similar to the Jets as we get into Miami. What we're looking for and, discussions with the coaches and how do we set up practices. So the path, I was pleased with the practice that you guys were able to watch on last Thursday. So it'll be similar to that. And then as we get into the game, some guys may play a little more, some a little less. So it's more on an individual basis.
Yeah, so that's about as far as he's going to go on that. And as for what he wants to see, not just in the game on Saturday, because, the way things went last week with the Jets, they had that practice last Thursday. That didn't go well. That was 1s versus 1s. In the game, they look good, but realized that Jayden Daniels was playing against a lot of backup guys. So these are the goals as they gear towards the Miami game Saturday.
I want to see us really do a good job with the ball, and I'm hopeful I see 0 takeaways, from the offensive side and that number going up defensively. And I'd like to see the missed tackles going down. And I think I had, the saying, expect the expected. Usually the missed tackles are a little higher on your first game. You haven't fully, tackled in practice. So I would hope, after the game at Miami, I see that number coming down. And conversely, the ability to break tackles, so those things go hand in hand. And I think, some of the playmakers we have, I want that to increase. And then on the other side, tackling, to be sharper.
And as excited as they got about the Tressway tackle, I don't think he wants to see his punter making any more tackles against the Dolphins. So the other day, you may have heard this, that Colin Kaepernick gave an interview to Sky Sports. I think they're based in London. And he said that he still wants to play. He hasn't played since 2016. He's been out of the league longer than Martavis Bryant. He's 36 years old. He's been in the news almost constantly since he last played for the 49ers because of his stand on social issues, and that led to players taking a knee and the then president of the United States calling players SOBs. I mean, he's been a lightning rod. He's collected $10 million in compensation from the NFL. He did have a tryout that went sideways in Atlanta, I want to say 4 years ago, and he wound up taking it to a high school field and, no interest there. Get this, Jim Harbaugh, who made him a starting quarterback the year that the 49ers went to the Super Bowl and played the Ravens. He replaced Alex Smith after Smith got hurt and took him all the way. He wants to bring him to the Chargers. Not as a player, though. Yeah, get this. Harbaugh talked to USA Today. I think it was Jarrett Bell. He said He said that I think it would be tremendous. He said he'd be a tremendous coach if that's the path that he chose. Harbaugh said that shortly after he came to the NFL in January, after Michigan won the title and he signed with the Chargers, he talked to Kaepernick about joining them in a non-playing capacity. Yet in the months since, there's been no movement. He said, yeah, we talked about it a little bit. This is Harbaugh. He's considering it. He was out of the country. He was going to get back to me. We haven't reconnected since that. That was early in the year. So it was 7-8 months ago that they talked. Harbaugh is one of the big supporters over the years. He actually brought him in during a spring game at Michigan just to get some people's eyeballs on him. He also says that Colin Kaepernick is one of the favorite players he's ever coached, loves him. And he does have some former players on his staff, Navarro Bowman, Jonathan Goodwin, and Will Takufu, but he has not spoken about reviving his career with the Chargers. That's not something that seems to be on the table for Harbaugh. Not that it, I guess, couldn't happen. I mean, we've seen this before. Coaches have put on a uniform in the past and, come back as a player, but I don't see that happening. Harbaugh said, I see him as a hero. Heroes get no days off, and he's being a hero right now, and he's not getting any days off. It's not for me to choose what path he takes. That's his decision. Yeah, that'd be an interesting move. I would never have thought of him as a coach. But I guess Harbaugh sees enough in him, and I guess, maybe he can point to his courage. Maybe that's something that players might admire, and that he did take a stance. It cost him his career, and I think in some cases he's been his own worst enemy over the years. That Atlanta whole mess was I think on him to a great degree. He didn't like the conditions that the Falcons had set up, or the league had set it up actually with the Falcons, and wound up throwing a bunch of long passes on a high school field where scouts really couldn't get a good idea about what he is. But I don't think he's going to play again in the league. But it would be intriguing if he were to join the Chargers staff under Harbaugh, who made him a star in the NFL. It's coming up. Ian O'Connor's got a book out about Aaron Rodgers, and it's odd, like most things in Aaron Rodgers' life, about the cooperation of the book. We'll hear from both O'Connor and Aaron Rodgers coming up next. Plus, Kim Stone, who is the CEO of the Washington Spirit, to tell us about a great event that is going on this weekend at Audi Field. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, we got Orioles preview coming up at 10:30. We'll talk to James McCann, catcher for the Birds. He will join us and talk about, among other things, last night's disappointing game for the Orioles as they were blown out by the Nationals, but they're just a half game back in the standings. He's got something special coming up this weekend at Audi Field. And the not the D.C. Spirit, it's the Washington Spirit. They are going to be doing something that has never been done before. They're going to make history when they face Arsenal in the first U.S. appearance for them, which will be Sunday, 2 o'clock at Audi Field. And joining us to talk more about it is Kim Stone, who is the CEO of the Washington Spirit. This has been sort of an odd season for you, in that there was this big gap for the Olympics. Not that it wasn't great, and to see Tiffany Rodman as one of the stars and winning the gold medal, but what's it been like for you with this big gap so far?
You said it well and phrased it well. It has been outstanding and fun. I mean, Trinity on the international stage, you had 9 million people watch the U.S. women's national team gold medal match. So it would normally be, a sort of something that would be interesting and sort of take the momentum out of our season, but this has actually been jet fuel into our rocket ship. So for us, it's been fantastic, and we're super excited that, Trinity, and not just Trinity, we also had 3 other players from our team participate on that women's national soccer team. And they play here in D.C. Like your fans, they can come see them, almost every weekend here in D.C. at Audi Field. So we're excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great boost to see that happen. You go back, it's been 25 years since the 99 team won, and that launched several leagues that didn't necessarily survive. Your league seems to have some real staying power now. What do you think the difference has been?
This is just the right moment in society, right? You see the interest level in women's professional sports and women's sports overall. Really, this isn't just a moment; it's a movement now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the difference. There are more fans. There's more ways to reach fans. It's not just through over-the-air TV networks, social media. What that has meant. And people can, curate their own interest and follow their own players that they want to, their own teams that they want to. So I really think those have been contributing factors. We are, as you said, we play in the National Women's Soccer League, so the NWSL, which is the fastest growing professional sports leagues. You've seen, Bob Iger from Disney and Willow Bay just bought Angel City FC for $150 million. So the valuations of these teams are soaring. The interest levels are soaring, just like a lot of interest is soaring in women's sports. And you see it, the thread is carrying through, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's the WNBA, whether it's the NWSL, like you see the interest level just really rising. And that's the difference this time.
I know it's been 35 years, but just for a perspective check, the Dallas Cowboys sold for $189 million in 1989. You could probably sell them for north of $10 billion now. So not that your league is quite at that level yet, but, it's probably a good investment for the future for sure.
Amen. Give us 30 years. We'll be there.
There you go. We're talking to Kim Stone, who is the CEO of the Washington Spirit. So this weekend, you are bringing in the English powerhouse Arsenal. It's a 2:00 game at Audi Field. Is this a sellout or tickets available?
Tickets are going fast, so definitely we want to encourage your fans to get them quickly. We are, as you mentioned, this is putting a global spotlight on women's soccer. So we're going from Paris, and now you can come here in your backyard in D.C. and see 3 of the world's best women's professional soccer league teams. Between us, Arsenal, and Chelsea. Arsenal and Chelsea, their rivalry is equivalent in England to like the Yankees Red Sox rivalry. I mean, it is historic. There are passions on each side. So we're bringing some of the best players in the world to Audi Field this weekend and next weekend. There's a doubleheader next weekend. This weekend is Spirit versus Arsenal. Next weekend is Spirit versus Kansas City Current, which is one of our rivals in the NWSL. They're number 2 in the NWSL, so we're right behind them at number 3. So that's going to be a great game, followed by Arsenal and Chelsea rivalry matchup following that. So we're just, excited. We'll think fans are going. We don't think we know fans are going to really enjoy themselves, and it's going to be beautiful weather this weekend. So come on out.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the genesis of this? How did this all come together?
So some of your fans, and maybe you know Michelle Kang, who is the owner of the Washington Spirit. This is her brilliance in full display. So she believes and has doubled down on women's sports. You may have seen at the Olympics that she ended up giving $4 million to the U.S. women's rugby team to give them a chance to have additional resources heading into L.A. because Michelle just believes in women's sports and not as a charity. And she says that this women's sports is not a charity. It is a business venture. So this was her brainchild. Let's bring women's, professional soccer teams from Europe into the United States. The men do it all the time. Arsenal men had a tour through the U.S. So let's do it with the women's team. And so it was really her vision and her desire to put this on an international stage. And this is going to be broadcast on a streaming service called DAZN, which has the largest YouTube following across the globe in terms of women's sports. So we're super excited about what we're bringing and what we're doing. And this is just year one of this will be this will be an annual event.
Okay. And you mentioned that Arsenal is going to play Chelsea next weekend, a week from this weekend. Will they spend the week sightseeing here, or will they play other matches while they wait for that matchup with Chelsea?
Arsenal is going to be in town doing the sites and visiting it and visiting around, and we're going to be taking them for a nice dinner at the Kennedy Center as well. So we're really rolling out the red carpet, showing everything that DC has to feature for Arsenal. So they'll be here all week practicing. This is for these international teams, RC and Chelsea. This is their preseason because they play a fall to spring schedule. So they're coming here as sort of like a tune-up, getting ready for their season. So you're going to see all the players, and you're going to see the best players getting ready for their leagues over in Europe. So we're excited to have them, and they'll be around town. And you may have seen some of our buses that the big bus tours that we branded with "The British Are Coming" advertising. So you might see those around town as you and your audience are out and about.
Very good. So, again, it's this Sunday as Washington Spirit will be playing Arsenal. That's 2 o'clock at Audi Field. And then the following Sunday, it'll be Arsenal playing Chelsea as part of a doubleheader as the Washington Spirit take on Kansas City. I got all those details right?
You got them right. Yes, the doubleheader is very special next weekend as well. So well done. And as always, we would love to have you out there.
Well, as a matter of fact, I am going to Seattle this weekend to see my son get married. So I'm otherwise engaged this weekend. Thank you. So, but if I didn't have a previous engagement, I certainly will try to get out there. Thank you very much, and best of luck. Sounds very exciting.
Thank you. Appreciate it, and congratulations to you and your son.
Thank you.
Enjoy your trip.
Thank you. That's Kim Stone, who is the Washington Spirit CEO. And again, 2 big weekends coming up at Audi Field with 2 of the best teams in the world playing soccer. And the nasal, not the nasal. It used to be the nasal. That's what they called the men's league, the women's professional soccer league. They're getting back into what they're doing after the Olympics. Okay, let me move on to this is something that is it's interesting to me because you get autobiographies where you'll take a writer who will take a famous person and write the person's story in his own words. Okay. Then you'll have a biography where sometimes you get the cooperation of the person. Sometimes you have an unauthorized biography. This seems to be in between. Ian O'Connor's got a new book out about Aaron Rodgers. And, Aaron Rodgers is an odd guy. He marches to the beat of his own drum. So getting cooperation from him is not an easy thing to do. And Ian O'Connor has sort of gotten cooperation from him, but not full cooperation. So he was on yesterday with Andrew Siciliano on the Rich Eisen Show and explained exactly how this new book about Aaron Rodgers is coming together.
I made a lot of requests before a sit-down with him, obviously, through the Jets, through his agent. I directly reached out to Aaron. I sent him books I had written in the past on Belichick and Coach K, and never really got any response, yes or no. And I actually handed in a manuscript in January without him, and assumed that he was not going to cooperate. And frankly, he doesn't owe me anything. And so that's fine. I've done books before with no cooperation. And then in February, I get a message from the Jets that he's now willing to see me. So I had to reopen the book, and I flew out to Malibu to sit down with him, had a bomb scare on the flight, ended up in Chicago, diverted for 8 hours, but survived that. And the 2 hours with him was, they were more than worth it. And he made the book better without question. It was really more of a fact-checking process at the end of all my interviews and talking to his friends, his family members, his parents. His brothers did not talk to me, but I did talk to a lot of people very close to him. And I think he wanted to know, what did you hear? And what do I need to counter or put into context? And it was an enjoyable give and take. And again, he made the book better, and he did not owe me that sit down at all, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, so that's odd that the book is sort of written, and then he turns over the manuscript to Rodgers. Rodgers, I guess, saw enough in it that he liked it enough to provide some cooperation. So now you have to kind of rewrite the thing, work in the quotes, work in the other parts of it, but that's all part of the book writing process. This was Rodgers yesterday on WFAN with Gio and Boomer, the morning show there, Boomer Esiason and Greg Giannotti. And he discussed the book and actually what he learned about himself reading the book.
He did a lot of research on his own. He's done other books with other famous people in sports. I think he reached out to 500 people and talked to maybe half those people. At the end, although he'd already written, I believe, a first draft, we had a conversation and sat down. It was more just kind of him asking a few things. A lot of the stuff that was in there, is 20 plus years old. And I commend him for the time he spent on it, but it's not a book that I asked him to write for me. He wrote it on his own, and there'll be some interesting things in there that are perspective-based. They'll for sure be some stuff that's true. I mean, he wrote the first chapter, I believe, about my grandfather, which was pretty cool. I mean, he sent me a copy of there was a war crimes tribunal that got together because my grandfather was shot down in the First World War and spent 9 months in a POW camp, and there were some rough conditions there, and he got to testify in front of the War Crimes Commission. That's not the cool part. The cool part is that he had to give a bunch of information out about his past, and so I got to learn stuff about my grandfather, like where he was living at, what his jobs were. I didn't know he went to the University of Texas at Austin. You know, a bunch of really cool things. So I appreciate that kind of research that he did. And there's other stories in there that are true, that I'm sure are true. There's stories that are maybe exaggerated over time. There's stories that are prospectively true to people because that's what it seemed to them. But it'll be interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to read it or not. I'm definitely going to read a chapter about my grandfather. But I'm sure there'll be stuff.
Yeah, there's a nice excerpt in the New York Post today if you'd like to read it.
I bet there is.
About Olivia and everything else. And you're 20 years. You've been around for 20 years. You're one of the greatest quarterbacks of his era, and will go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And you're a very interesting guy, and you're not afraid to say things.
I'm not.
And this is why things like this tend to follow you around. I mean, it's just a part of your life. It's a part of who you are. I've always said that, of all the guys that I've ever interviewed in the NFL that have played our position, I don't necessarily know that there's anybody that thinks the way that you do. Maybe Tom Brady to a certain extent, but the things that you think about are different than what everybody else is thinking about.
Well, I think that is partially true. I think the other part is I'm willing to say non-cliche things every single time we sit down for something like this. I'm not worried about the repercussions from it. But yeah, there's some interesting stories I'm sure that come out of it.
There will be, yes.
And ones that are not based in a lot of fact, to be honest.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think you are covered? 0 being not fairly, 10 being fair. Where do you think in national media, whatever media, just overall, how do you think you're covered, fairly or not?
I will respond to that with a scale of how much I care, and it's don't give is 0 and care deeply about it is 10, and I would say it's about a 1.
But I will respond with this. There are some times though you go on with McAfee and you want to fight against people saying things that are untrue or whatever.
When things get so far down the narrative that it gets so ridiculous, and there'll be things probably in this book that are on that level. But listen, I had a conversation with Ian, and he was, I commend him. He was trying to do a really good job and getting the entire picture, but you have to put everything into context. I don't know what kind of book he's going to write. I do know that when I met him, one of the first things he said was, "I'm double vaxxed and double boosted."
Was he wearing a mask?
And then he went on a story about Kyrie Irving. So listen, I'm sure it'll be an interesting read.
Yeah, well, the headline as the book was being released was that Rodgers regretted saying that he was, he didn't say immunized. What was the word that he used? But he did not. He was not vaccinated, and he indicated that he was. It was a misleading quote, and then he wound up with COVID and wound up missing a game, and people said, "Hey, what happened here?" Now, not that the vaccine necessarily prevents you from being from getting COVID, but he was misleading, and players. There are all kinds of different protocols for players who did not want to get the vaccine. One of them was Kirk Cousins. He didn't have it. So, but Rodgers in being misleading, saying he is immunized, that really wasn't exactly what it was. So that was the takeaway from the first part of it. The other part is the family dynamic. And this was actually in a 60 Minutes feature that was done on Rodgers years ago, that he's been estranged from the family. And the story that Boomer Esiason was talking about in the New York Post, the excerpt indicated that Olivia Munn, who was his former girlfriend, may have been somehow involved in that, somehow played a factor. Who knows? So this is more from Ian O'Connor talking yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show about the family dynamic that seems to be going on right now between Rodgers and, in particular, his father.
Yeah, that was the most tense part of the conversation I had with him. And the one thing I really appreciated is the fact that he understood that as a biographer, I had to cover this. That if I was writing the story of his life, the fact that he hasn't talked to his parents and his two brothers in almost 10 years, that had to be covered. And there are athletes, I think you would agree with this, who wouldn't understand that. Why not just write about my career? So that helped. And it's the estrangement has gone on for far too long. And there's a lot of he said in it. It's sort of death by 1,000 cuts as opposed to one particular development that unfolded that caused the estrangement. It's very complicated, and as most family divisions are. But he was candid about it. There were some things he wouldn't talk about, but he did address some things about that division and estrangement on the record. And the parents and other family members, some blame Olivia Munn for much of this. I don't in my book, because I think Aaron entered that relationship with feelings that maybe she notarized. But at the end of the day, he hasn't dated her in 7 years, and he's still carrying on this estrangement. So it's not all her fault at all. And so, listen, there's a scene in the book that I was very happy to nail down and get on the record from both Aaron and his father. They hugged last year at the Lake Tahoe Celebrity Golf Tournament. And Ed Rodgers told me he hadn't seen or spoken to his son in almost 9 years. And when he turned and 15 feet away is his middle child staring at him, he said, I froze because I forgot what it felt like to have my son in my presence. And they hugged, they cried, or at least Ed did. Aaron had to go back to play the rest of his golf round. But that moment is a very emotional scene in the book, and both talked about it and said it meant a lot to each of them. And hopefully it's the first baby step towards reconciliation, and I think it will be.
Ian O'Connor's book is Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers. So after they hugged, he just went back to playing golf, and they never, Ian, reconnected in Tahoe?
They didn't reconnect in Tahoe, and I just think this is one thing. It's going to take Aaron even maybe more time. I don't know. He's trying to figure out a way to kill this thing off. And it's just easier to let it live and let it linger than to confront this living organism that is the estrangement and put an end to it. And I do think there might have been some electronic communication in recent months, brief, but hey, that's something. And I think that the road to a reunification of the family is going to run through the father. His father is his idol, was his idol in college. When he gave an interview at Cal Berkeley, Aaron talked about looking up to Joe Montana and Steve Young as a kid. That's who he wanted to be. But he said, really, my idol is my father. That's who I want to be. And Ed Rodgers was his first coach. He taught him how to play football and was with him all the way, and his biggest fan. So I think clearly if there is a reconciliation, it will go through the father. It'll happen hopefully in the coming months. And then organically, the rest of the family will fall back into place.
It's weird. Isn't that weird? I mean, in the movie, when he hugs his father, that's it. They're reconciled. He's playing golf, sees his father. They hug. The father cries. And then Aaron Rodgers goes, I got to get back to the seventh tee or whatever. You know, it's just bizarre. And the whole thing is bizarre. Now, not that this doesn't happen in families. And, I guess it's happened to some extent in my family as well, extended family, not immediate family. But it's very strange. And Rodgers is just a weird guy, right? He's just a weird guy. And he always acts like he's smarter than everybody. That's the thing that really gets me about him. Great quarterback, no question about it, but just has this attitude like, oh, yeah, I know what's going on, and you don't necessarily know what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on when I want to tell you what's going on. And Giannotti, referenced that he goes on McAfee to set the record straight when he wants to do it that way. Very, very strange, very strange. And look, it better work out for the Jets because they are so invested in this. Last year, complete disaster, goes down after 4 plays. He hasn't played in 2 years. He's 40 years old. Who knows how good he's going to be? And you're not going to really get a look at him in training camp. And even if he plays in one of these exhibition games, it doesn't really matter that much. Those things are not the same. So they, once again, are going to open on Monday Night Football, and they're going to open against the San Francisco 49ers, team that made the Super Bowl last year. And this is like take two, Hope that things go a lot differently in his first game this year than they did last year. One other thing I want to throw in here before we get to Orioles preview, and this really surprised me because I hadn't heard this name in years. There's a basketball player named Royce White who was taken in the first round by the Houston Rockets in 2012. I believe he played at Iowa State. Never played for the team because and this was at a time, it's 12 years ago, people didn't talk about it as much, but he had some mental health issues and said he didn't want to fly to road games. So he signed multiple 10-day contracts with the Sacramento Kings in 2013. He played 3 games, but eventually he was let go. He played overseas for a while. He's now 33 years old, and he just won the Republican nomination in the primary election for the Senate in Minnesota. I guess he's from Minnesota, and he defeated Navy veteran Joe Frazier. He's going to challenge Amy Klobuchar, who has served in the Senate since 2007. She's been a presidential candidate. This will probably be a lopsided election. He doesn't probably have much of a chance of doing this, but just the fact that he has made it back to this point. Now he's running on some very odd terms, including how he feels about women. But he ran and lost in the GOP primary for the House in 2022. He is arguing that as a black man, he can broaden the party's base by appealing to voters of color in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and others delusioned with establishment politics. But he's very far to the right here, and he will be facing Amy Klobuchar. You don't hear about these people for a long time. He was in the news a lot, and there was a feature on him on Real Sports. And, mental health is a big thing. It's a big thing in sports, and he was one of the ones who brought a lot of attention to it. And now at 33, having concluded his basketball career, he's going to make a run at the Senate in Minnesota. Probably won't win, but the fact that he's put himself – a lot of athletes have succeeded in politics. Bill Bradley certainly among them, and others who have and then, look, Jesse Ventura was the governor of Minneapolis, and he's another one that he was a wrestler, but still, but yeah, that was kind of a stunner for me. All right, coming up, we'll talk to James McCann, catcher for the Orioles. Orioles now a half game out of first place. They got 70 wins. They're 20 games over 500, but they're scuffling right now. And last night they were blown out by the Nats. We'll talk about the state of the team with James and other things as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.